Canberra's in Southampton, and all's well with the world. For a moment, it seemed like any other cruise. But the banners said different, and so did the balloons. This was an occasion not to be missed. 95-year-old Alice Lovely wasn't going to miss it. She'd known Canberra from the very beginning.
I hear you on the maiden voyage.
Yes.
1,594 passengers checked in to a passage of history. The captain came ashore to greet them.
And we make this one a good one as well. The last one is going to be the best.
Elsewhere, preparations went on as normal, in exactly the way they'd gone on for the 23 years Canberra had been cruising. Just because things were being done for the last time didn't mean they were done any differently. And then it was time to board. Who knew what memories and adventures the next 2 weeks would hold? Joyce and Edam certainly didn't. Now there are more signs of the special occasion. Full ceremonial dress for members of the Indian crew, and a visit from Lord Stirling, chairman of P&O, to meet the officers and wish them bon voyage.
Thank you very much.
On the quayside, the celebrations were getting into their swing. The appearance of the Parachute Regiment Band recalled Canberra's own military service, when in 1982, the 3rd Battalion of the Paras were among the troops she carried to the Falklands. As the strains of those magnificent men died away, Captain Rory Smith made the announcement that few imagined they would ever hear.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is the captain. In 2 minutes' time, Canberra will let go her remaining mooring lines and begin her final departure from Southampton on this epic last voyage. All our pre-departure safety checks have been satisfactorily completed, and Canberra is about to sail.
And so began 20 days of almost non-stop partying. Anyone who thought the farewell cruise was going to be an unremittingly nostalgic, even sad occasion could not have been more wrong. Proud, yes, and at times nostalgic, but never glum. Canberra was to go out in the way her fans wanted her to be remembered, and the mood was set from the moment she cast off from Southampton. But of course, nothing lasts forever, and that includes farewell cruise mementos. Canberra's shops did some of their briskest business within a few hours of her leaving port, with passengers determined not to miss out on souvenirs they feared might run out. There were traditions to observe. Paying off pennants used to be the ship's length plus a yard for every year of service. That was all right in Nelson's day, but for Canberra it would have meant a flag more than 300 yards long. Instead, they settled for a yard for every year of her life.
We've lost a few of you today to the sun.
There were scrapbooks to make, and plenty of suggestions of what could go in them.
You can probably save your tickets, letters from travel agents, menus. Your waiters will collect the menus for you each day.
This is the sort of thing that they said, 8 good reasons.
The incentive was to see just how fascinating old scrapbooks could be.
And you will see from this that the cost of a 2-berth cabin, which would happen to be C280, was £119 per person. For 15 days.
The children's cocktail party. It was only fitting that a ship that had introduced so many people to cruising should have the next generation of cruisers so well represented on her final voyage. What will their memories be? Probably the sausage rolls. One of the centres of the Canberra memory industry was the photographer's shop. There's no stronger reason for buying pictures than knowing that whatever happens will never happen again. Every occasion was a last, like the captain's welcome aboard cocktail party. As people would remark many more times on the cruise, it was almost a family affair.
10 years ago.
There were not many on board who didn't know at least one of their fellow passengers, a point that did not escape Captain Smith.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure now to formally present the Master of Canberra, Captain Rory Smith.
Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and dare I say it, I think I can, Canberrites. As we've walked around the ship in the last 24 hours, we have seen so many people who have cruised in this ship time after time over the years. And it's fairly obvious that a very large number of you have come back to say once again, and for the final time, hello to this marvellous ship. This is a cruise where we are remembering the great times that over 1 million people have had in this ship in her 36 years of serving the British cruising public. There are many, many people who have lasting memories of this ship, friendships forged, bonds made, dare I say, romances forged. And many of them, I very nearly said, ended in marriage. And I will change that to resulted in marriage, because I know a lot of them have in fact come back. A lot of you have come back having met your spouses on board the ship and have come back on this cruise to relive the romance of those years. We certainly look forward to experiencing some of the fun and the enjoyment of the 19 days to come, and we look forward to getting to know you all once again. And it is really marvellous to see so many of you back, because it seems as though we're a big extended family on this cruise. Lovely to have you here with us.
One member of the family to be welcomed by the captain was Alice Lovely.
And you are too, aren't you? Yeah, looking very dashing this evening. Enjoying yourself, I hope.
Canberra steamed south in weather that made no demands on her reputation for being an outstanding sea ship. By day, life went on in the way it has ever since cruising began. You can no more have a deck without quoits than you can without chairs.
Have you won this morning?
Some things, though, didn't exist when Canberra came down the slipway in 1960. Line dancing, for one.
Well, I traveled the world and I guess I've never seen most of the things God made my eyes to see. But there's one thing I wish I never clapped my eyes on. That's a country rock and roller from Leeds. She danced all day, then she danced the night away. She even wore the hose out in my boots. My yeehaw's never been the same, and she's the only one to blame. That green-eyed blonde with dark roots. She's a country rock and roller from Leeds.
The Golden Cockerel, actually 2 pieces of brass plate, goes to the fastest ship in the P&O fleet. Canberra inherited it from the original Oriana. It's flourished when ships in the fleet pass, as here off Portugal. Victoria was on her way north. Dipping the ensign is another part of the ceremony. On this cruise, it was an excuse to bring out the flags and balloons again. Tradition is never far below the surface on any P&O ship, and nor on this voyage was nostalgia. A board was prepared recalling Canberra's 3-month maiden voyage in 1961, which took her to Sydney and across the Pacific to San Francisco. And having read about the 60s, you can get a reprise of the sounds of the 60s from Canberra's own radio station.
With the time now at 20 minutes after 6, it's P&O's Best Music Mix. CFM, your onboard DJ John Gittos with you through until 7:15. We're running down the big top 5 from the 2nd of June 1961, the day that Canberra set sail on her maiden voyage. Just starting there at number 2, that's Del Shannon and Runaway. The big top 5 then down to number 1. Standing at number 5, the Marcells and Blue Moon. Number 4, The Shadows and The Frightened City. Number 3, More Than I Can Say, Bobby V. And just starting there, Del Shannon Runaway stands at number 2. And the big number 1 from the 2nd of June 1961, the day that Canberra set sail on her maiden voyage, Mr. Elvis Presley and Surrender.
But Canberra had her own hitmaker on board. Gerard Kenny, author of New York, New York, among others, and now the composer of Canberra's own song. It was to become the anthem of the farewell cruise.
36 years of history to put in 4.5 minutes. Which bits did you feel?
The main bits are the fact that how many years it's been so wonderful to come on Canberra, and it's never failed anyone. It's just been nothing but an experience of friendship and love and happiness. If you talk to people about the Canberra, that's the first thing they say, what a friendly ship. It's just, I don't know, it's like a creation. Like a song is a creation, like a piece of art is a creation. I think a ship is a creation too. There's an atmosphere on Canberra that is just its own, and it's a thing that you can't make. It just happens to happen. And so there's a whole thing about the fact that, you know, it served your captain and crew and all the passengers so well in the first verse. And then I mentioned the fact that, of course, it went to Australia, all the immigrants that went to Australia, and also to the Falkland Islands, which was something, the great white whale sitting right there, for all to take target practice at, and nobody hit it. I think there's a magic glow around it for some reason. God looks after it. And of course, in the end, my idea of sitting in the crow's nest and hearing that last dinner bell is going to be, you know, and then we'll just toast our hostess, you see. And so it's Canberra, our home on the sea, and that's sort of the main idea of the whole song.
And shall we take a listen to that excellent single now, Gerard?
If you will, please.
Do you want to introduce it for us?
Yes, this is called Farewell Canberra, and it is my tribute to all the wonderful people who have been involved in the Canberra, the passengers, the captain, the crew, and everyone. I really love you all very much.
Your journey is through. You served us so proudly. Your captain and crew will always remember, wherever we may be, our home here on Canberra, our home on the sea.
Even the quiz was about Canberra.
The Falklands War conflict. And of course you all know that the Canberra was involved with the Falklands War conflict. On what exact date did she return from the Falklands War conflict? On what date did she return back to Southampton at the end of the Falklands War conflict?
Well, it was 1982, and she sailed on April the 9th, Good Friday. But when she got back...
It wasn't July 1st or June the 13th, September the 2nd, August 15th? Correct answer was July the 11th, 1982.
Gibraltar, like Canberra herself, another bastion of Britishness. If only Canberra had apes, she might not have gone to the breakers. But unlike the Rock, which legend says will last as long as the apes are there, the bells tolled for the ship. Here, as with all the other ports, she left with a lot of affection and local pageantry. Gibraltar was the first of the ports of call. There were only 8 in the whole 20-night cruise. The emphasis on this voyage was decidedly introspective. The focus this time was on the ship, rather than the shore. On September the 17th, Canberra arrived at Haifa, from where the excursions went into the Holy Land, Jerusalem and Mount Zion. Kenneth Vard was one of the lecturers on board. A marine historian, he was able to put Canberra into a historical perspective.
Canberra was the largest ship to be built in Britain since the Queen's had been built before the war, so that, number one, made her very different. Number two, she wasn't designed to carry any cargo at all. She was going to be a purely passenger liner. So she was very significant historically at the time. Her design features, of course, were enormously futuristic. And when she was launched, of course she was launched without her funnels and without her mast, but the overall design and shape of the using of aluminium as well as steel, she was, yes, a tremendously important step forward in shipbuilding and ship design. Canberra represents the last of an era. She was an ocean liner in a day when ocean liners were the only means of transportation between continents. The scream of the jet engine finished it all, and the whole infrastructure of liner travel collapsed within a few years. The Atlantic went first, then the long-distance ships.
But that left cruising. And from 1973 to this final voyage, Canberra, the most famous British cruise ship of all, brought places like Istanbul to new generations of travellers. Istanbul, which she reached on September the 19th. The following afternoon, when she sailed, the deck buffet, appropriately enough, was kebabs, grilled within sight of the minarets of Turkey. P&O were determined that no standards or attention to detail would be relaxed simply because this was a final cruise. Canberra might be about to go to her breakers, but she would go with a shiny bell. As Canberra approached the Dardanelles, Captain Smith updated the passengers from the bridge.
Canberra is now approaching the entrance to the Dardanelles Passage. We're 7 miles from the town which we know as Gallipoli, and we will be reducing speed to Dardanelles Island. All through the Sea of Marmara and down through the Dardanelles, there is a traffic separation scheme.
By 7:30 the following morning, Canberra had anchored off Piraeus, the port of Athens. Now there was the chance for some budding young Greek sailors to do what any ship enthusiast would like to do, and come on board the illustrious old ship. Staff Captain Nick Carlton was on hand to receive the party of Sea Scouts. There were some for whom memory was not enough. They wanted a bit of Canberra, and the ship's engineers and carpenters obliged, turning all kinds of odd components into desirable souvenirs. One was a billy can left by a shipyard worker when she was built, and found years later in a deckhead. John Pike, the oldest crew member, works on turning sections of the ship's rail into pencil holders. All these items will be auctioned later in the cruise. Tonight is Tropicana night. Never mind that Canberra's presently some 24 degrees north of the tropics. That's never stopped her going tropo in the past, and it certainly won't on this occasion. It's one of those events that wouldn't be complete without sparkling baked Alaskas and a procession of smiling waiters to bring them into the dining room. Tropicana night on Canberra was always a night for emotion, and the feelings flooded into the night's rendition of Sailing as Never Before. To be near you, to be free. Who needs satellites to communicate?
What, love? What's this on the end of this? I don't know, I'll have to know we're done that.
Mavis B. Jenkins, Mavis B. to her followers, one of the Canberra characters. Mavis B. runs the handicraft classes, but today there's an extra sense of purpose because they're making the banners that will be hung from the rails for special moments on the voyage.
Oops, I've got it all over me.
These are important tasks and not to be entrusted entirely to the adults. Little Chelsea Inglis would later have even greater reason to remember the farewell cruise. It's very difficult to describe what made the ship so special to people who never sailed on Canberra, but this comes close to it. The saddest thing about Canberra's passing is not the dismantling of steel and timber, but the extinguishing of the extraordinary spirit the ship contained, the peculiar mix of sentiment and irreverence that made it all so British.
And won't you please say hello to the folks I know, tell them I won't be long. They'll be happy to know that it's you saw me go. I was singing this song. We'll meet again. Don't know where, don't know where. But I know we'll meet again some sunny day.
More nostalgia. Not only were there newspaper cuttings and music from the maiden cruise, there were passengers.
Interesting is that the table numbers in the restaurant haven't changed from day.
Jim Lee had his first birthday on board.
That's a letter.
He still has the mementos his family kept on their voyage home from Australia. Among them, a little Canberra doll and a birthday card signed by the master, Commodore Wilde.
I remember telling my mother to go out to Weymouth, and my old aunt came out and had a look.
The senior assistant purser then, who also made the shakedown cruise around the British coast, was Barry Cox. What were his memories of those days?
Well, there was very much a segregation between first class and tourist. Certainly in the tourist class there were a lot of migrants on the £10 passage scheme. Otherwise there were travellers either going part of the way. In those days you took people who were going out to work abroad service personnel, planters to the Far East, or returning holiday makers to Australia, and people visiting their family in Australia and New Zealand. There was a very strict barrier between first class and tourist class, right through the middle of the ship, about where the bureau is now. Well, that's the purser's office. You couldn't cross barriers. Occasionally, if there were families who got their children in tourists, they were allowed to come up into the cabins, but they were not allowed to eat in the restaurant or come up on for entertainment. The main difference was in the restaurant, in the meals. The first class have the menus as they are today, with a big choice. In the tourist class, say the dinner menu was just a choice of 2 or 3 main dishes, plus the starters and the thing. Also, there was a difference mainly in the crewing. The first class end, they were practically all British staff, in cabin stewards and the stewards in the dining room, and virtually no women in those days. There were very few. Tourist end, it was practically all the Goanese stewards in the cabins and in the dining room. It was a very much more disciplined ship. The officers didn't mix with the crew socially. You called the captain Sir or Captain Wild. You'd never referred to them by their Christian names. Nowadays, it's very much more relaxed, and you can see throughout the ship the really friendly atmosphere. It wasn't, not that it was unfriendly, but it was just far more disciplined.
36 years on, and the formality hasn't entirely gone, and nor has the partying. Mabel Johnson and her daughter hosted one of the many private parties where cruise director, captain and entertainers were guests. September the 23rd, Naples. On the quayside, a US Navy band, not so much beating the retreat as retreating the beat. The welcoming party of British school children were there to enjoy the show, and then came on board for a guided tour.
Take the top off that roof, please. Yes.
It's one of the most expensive pianos that you can buy.
Yeah. And is that same popular status?
Round back there is a little bar called the Century Bar.
Lovely jubbly.
It's quite a good little bar. Before dinner, you can come in and have it.
Executive chef David McLaughlin made some final checks for what was to be a very special VIP buffet lunch. While down in the engine room, the cameras are ready for a team photograph of Chief Engineer John Rocky Rockle and his department. The VIP guests who came aboard for lunch at Naples were senior NATO officers who'd been involved in the Falklands War. It was at Naples, on the last leg of her world cruise, that Canberra received the signal that she was to be requisitioned as a troop carrier and hospital ship. There were still a few Falklands veterans among the crew. Dave Barraclough, one of the engineers, and fish chef John Solway, who recalled how on the last day there was only enough food left for breakfast, T-bone steaks, and maitre d' Peter Slim Berrant. Canberra's call-up and her service in the South Atlantic was enough to turn a ship from a favourite to a heroine. More visitors, this time a folklore group from Naples. Just time for a quick tarantella before the ship sailed. As Canberra slipped her moorings, Chef McLaughlin supervised preparations for dinner. On the menu tonight, sea bass, roast rib of beef, and chicken in a crab meat and lobster sauce. The cruise continued at a leisurely pace to Santa Margarita. Morning coffee was another moment of respite, and an opportunity to review the photographic evidence of what you did last night.
Very sorry about that.
The cruise was 3/4 of the way through, and the ship seemed to be gathering itself for the final fling.
Then I have left that in a little oblong.
Mavis B, banners now completed, could turn her attention to T-shirts.
At the bottom. Now, Gordon, this young 12-year-old now, has had it ironed on, so he's going to cut round, aren't you, Gordon? Gordon, come here. You know what you're going to do? You're going to cut round here. You must not take the paper off till you cut it out. And if it's sticking... Now, can you see what my ironing boards are like now? So
this beautiful brass cannon.
Phil Raymond took the chance to advertise the auction of memorabilia in a couple of days' time.
The second to last day and the day before that. So as I said earlier, it's not only yourselves who are artistic and craftsmen, but also our chippies and our engineers. There we are.
With Santa Margarita dead ahead, the bunting was raised in greeting. Great care is taken, incidentally, to ensure that the signal spells nothing intelligible in any language. Down went the anchor, followed by the tenders, and then the passengers who were going to spend an afternoon on the Italian Riviera. Back on board, and it was rehearsal time for the line dancers who would be taking part in the evening's Crazy Horse Show. And for the stewards to practice making a champagne fountain for the last day's deck party. No bubbles this time, they're pouring water. It's the night of the Crazy Horse Show. In the old days, cruise passengers used to make all their own entertainment. Not such a bad idea, judging by this.
Perfect.
In the galley itself, the chefs prepare for the passengers' visit for tonight's buffet. The Canberra centrepiece is put in position and photographed, and there's some impromptu entertainment for the queue in the restaurant waiting to go through. The party atmosphere is getting to everyone. In the galley, the splendid buffet is waiting. So is the photographer. feel like a prawn? David McLaughlin seems to be hearing a tale of kitchen disasters. That could have been the only reason for him to look quite so worried, because the evening passes off brilliantly with some wonderful food. September the 25th, Cannes. And who should be waiting but Oriana, one of Canberra's successors in the P&O Cruises fleet. Here was a meeting of the generations. Canberra the liner, a means of transportation built for the run to Australia. Oriana the cruise ship, a destination in itself. The Golden Cockerel, originally awarded to the fastest P&O ship, just as the blue ribbon was given to the fastest ship on the Atlantic, was to be presented by King Neptune to Oriana. The significance of the occasion was not lost on historian Kenneth Vard.
Suddenly, the last liner was handing over the symbol to a cruise ship. That was the first time that that happened, and the only time that will ever happen. And that to me was an extremely emotional and beautiful moment. It was wonderful. And I gather from people on the Oriana, the reverse was true. They suddenly saw this beautiful old liner sailing off into the sunset.
When it was all over, there was a final exchange of messages between Captains Rory Smith on Canberra and Colin Campbell on Oriana.
Oriana, Canberra, 8.
Yeah, go ahead, Roy.
Well, once again, Colin, now that we've drawn clear and are recovering the boats, that was a truly memorable sight and one I'm very pleased I was able to see. Thanks for your cheers and look after the Cockerel. We've had it for a few years, and thanks once again. I don't know what it looked like from your side, but certainly from our side it was very spectacular.
Absolutely tremendous, Roy. Absolutely tremendous. Absolute knockout. Complete knockout.
Good. Glad you enjoyed it. We certainly did. And once again, thanks very much. And smooth sailing in the years ahead, and look after the old Cockerel.
Another paragraph of the Canberra history had been written. Just like life ashore, nothing stops the horses. The Ascot evening has everything but Frankie Dettori and Julian Wilson.
It's the winner! Good evening, very nice hat there. Are you ready for some action tonight?
Oh, I certainly am. Some of your regulars here might recognise our horse as the coveted Golden Cockerel by the stable name. Achieved 29 knots in a previous race and running as fast as season.
Alright, well it's the Golden Cockerel. Go!
Someone should have told him that the Golden Cockerel has changed perches. He's on Oriana, probably racing at this very minute. Not a good omen.
Horse number 1 again is the winner.
Palma, Mallorca, Canberra's last foreign port of call.
That's the starboard engine going astern now.
Remolcador pro al rincón. I pulled the head.
The Spanish pilot and Captain Smith execute a tricky piece of parking.
Sí.
Yeah, the gangway there.
Another quayside serenade, this time from a group of Mallorquin folk dancers. Palma, once simply the capital of the package holiday industry on Mallorca, is now a busy cruise port. Another of the changes that Canberra's not only witnessed, but played her part in bringing about.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the captain. We hope you've all had a very pleasant day in Palma. This being the absolutely last port that Canberra will call at as a passenger vessel. We are about to sail, but as we draw clear of the berth, There will be a firework display which can be seen on the port side. All our pre-departure safety checks have been satisfactorily completed, and Canberra is about to sail for the last time from a foreign port.
As the fireworks crackled over Palmer Harbour and the farewell song echoed over the water, Canberra made her last departure just before midnight on Friday, September the 26th. The midnight buffet underway, the pilot leaves on his launch. Canberra is now left alone to ready herself in private for the last 1,800 miles of her cruising life.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is the officer of the watch. Since our departure from Palmer last night until noon today, Canberra has steamed a total distance of 232 nautical.
It fell to Rory Smith to be the last of her 26 captains. So how had he approached such an emotion-laden event as the final cruise?
Well, I've known Canberra for all my life at sea, and I've approached it perhaps a little bit differently than most. And I see this as the culmination of 36 years of a ship in commerce, sailing at sea, and the accolades that she is now getting, and the recognition of the part that she has played in the cruising scene of the United Kingdom in particular, I feel are justified. So I feel it very much as a very upbeat cruise rather than one of nostalgia and sorrow.
Did the passengers share this view?
I think the majority of them have looked at it very much that they want to enjoy this, and they have made it a party cruise. But there is that tinge always there that they will not be able to repeat this experience, and therefore there is a certain amount of sorrow in that. When you look at the passenger list or walk around the decks, there are literally so many people that have cruised with us in the past that it's not just a cruise. This is almost like a family gathering, and I think that is the overwhelming feeling that I certainly have, and most of the officers have on board, and crew, that this is a gathering of people who know each other rather than individuals that have to be welded into and made into a unit to get the cruise going. I think it started literally from the time we left Southampton. There's some lovely stories connected with not just this cruise but the people on board, and we can talk about Alice Lovely, this delightful lady of 95 who was here on the maiden voyage and is here on this final voyage. And she is not unique in her experiences and her attachments to Canberra in any way, but perhaps she spans both sides of the ship's career. But there are many, many people who have cruised with us so often that you can't really pick one out.
The T-shirt production line was still going strong. And Phil Raymond was sorting through the items of memorabilia that were going to be auctioned.
The menu from the dinner when Baroness Thatcher and the Duke of York came on board a little while ago. The engineers have been just amazing. They've worked on so much. The original door header plugs from the main boiler, the Foster Wheeler boiler, made into a pair of candlesticks. There's aluminium portholes, a kentometer, whatever that is. This is the most incredible story. That's 3 years ago there was a complaint about a rattling in the deckhead in D247, and when they opened the deckhead up they found the original billy can from Harland and Wolff Limited, and our Cito, the Chief Electrotechnical Officer, was actually an apprentice in the yard in 1961, so they took it from the deckhead and it's been mounted as a souvenir from the ship.
Big smiles. After 3, 1, 2.
There were still private celebrations as well as the public commemoration of a great ship. Vincent Billington gave a classical concert in the Meridian Lounge. In the audience was an unsuspecting Alice Lovely.
So I'll kneel down. Alice, as some of you may know, is at least, and she won't like me to say this, she's at least 85. She's 85. Are you?
I'm 95.
95? Isn't that wonderful? And isn't it lucky that there is a piece of music called Alice, Where Art Thou? Would you like me to play it for you? I'm going to play it anyway.
The astonishing Mrs. Lovely, who swam the 100 yards freestyle for Britain at the 1920 Olympics, was a passenger on the maiden voyage, and a regular on Canberra ever since. What has she been getting up to on the final cruise?
Well, I haven't been swimming. I didn't go because I've got arthritis badly in my knees and stops my legs working. I can't get my right arm out of the water, which is my stroke. So I have to do a pathetic breaststroke. So I've given that a go, but I still go dancing. Unfortunately, when you go without a partner, you don't stand much chance, but I know my age is against me. Who, a nice dancer, wants to dance with a person my age? So I sit there and to my astonishment I get picked up. I would like a nice partner, young and who can dance, and I think, well, who would have me at my age? But of course Neil is very nice indeed. He's a lovely dancer, but he thinks I'm elderly, and he gives me the walk dance. I want to do the sequence, but I thought, be satisfied. He's a marvellous dancer.
But wasn't all this activity exhausting?
I never get tired. Last night it was about 5 to 12 before we left the dance floor, and they said, well, they think they'd better go to bed. I said, well, I'll go. I'm not sitting here on my own. They said, well, aren't you tired, Alice? And I said, no. I said, I don't feel tired. And I said, possibly I shall lay in bed 2 hours before I get sleep. Then I take a tablet. I'll take a sleeping tablet.
Canberra's Stadium Theatre Company put on their farewell show.
When we must say goodbye, soon you'll be sailing far across the sea. While you're away, oh please remember me. When you return, you'll find me waiting here. Now is the hour when we must say goodbye.
No rest for the wicked or the ship's photographers. They're working round the clock to produce souvenir pictures. There's much to record. Now individual bars are holding their own farewell parties for their regulars. This is the Century Bar.
Let's all give a toast to the Canberra.
Canberra.
Always a lady you'll be.
Still, the souvenir hunt goes on. The captain bows to public demand and agrees to attend a session to sign Canberra books or anything else on which ink will dry.
Well, my pleasure.
This was a cruise not only of endings, it had a beginning too. On Sunday the 28th of September, Chelsea Inglis was christened in the Stadium Theatre during the last church service to be held on board. The baptism was performed by the ship's chaplain, the Reverend Joe Hogarth.
Chelsea, I baptize you in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
That would be something for Chelsea's parents, Shelley and Malcolm's scrapbook. But how are those scrapbooks looking that were started at the beginning of the voyage?
This is a navigational briefing plus a general briefing of the last entry of Canberra under the P&O colours into the port of Southampton.
One last conference.
Now, we normally arrive quite early in the morning, around about 2 or 3 o'clock, but on this occasion we will be beginning the approaches at 8 o'clock in the morning.
The last day approaches, and the captain has more in his mind than nostalgia.
Well, we have a schedule, and it is very tight. And we are very much aware that we have to be up in the upper swing ground by 11:30 and positioned across the Southampton docks so that the entire dock area has a good view of us. And we have to be there by 11:30 because the PR9 Canberra aircraft will be flying over at that time, and she must come over at that time, and therefore we must be there at that time. So everything is geared into achieving that objective.
It's great. It's never been so loud. That's wonderful.
Phil Raymond takes the podium in the Stadium Theatre to conduct the last of the auctions of Canberra memorabilia.
So we'll start with one or two of the smaller items. I know that our enthusiasts, I hope our enthusiasts are in again. We have some marine buffs who are definitely after some of the more weird and wonderful and unusual things. Signed by...
So far on his cruise, they've raised just over £14,000 for charities in Britain and across the globe.
How about this? Look at that. And that's... Well, I could put that out... No, never mind. Isn't that an amazing little piece of history that I'm sure someone will be delighted to take home?
The Harlan and Wolff Billy Can comes up for sale. What will that fetch?
At £600. At £600, I hear £600 once. I hear £600 twice. Sold for £600. He got what he came for. Lord Stirling had this made for the table, the special top table in the Pacific restaurant. It has the ship's crest on the front, and
that made £750.
Craftsmanship, made and French polished.
What about a life belt?
1,100. Do I hear 1,200? It's the last one. Do I hear 1,200? At 1,100 once. At 1,100 twice. 1,100. You got it. You got it. To go with your cap.
Another trophy for Joyce Needham.
At 3,002.
Now a plan of A deck when it was first class.
At 3,004. At 3,004. At 3,005. At 3,500 once. At £3,500 twice. £3,500, you got it.
Bringing the day's total to £20,620. All told, auctions held throughout the summer raised £69,390 for charity. Sunday, the 28th of September, and it's the reception for the captain's gala dinner.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure for the last time here in the Meridian Lounge to introduce the Master of Canberra, Captain Rory Smith.
Well, good evening once again, ladies and gentlemen. It is a delight to see so many of you here this evening. Now, I said right at the very beginning of this cruise that we would not make this cruise a series of lasts. And I'm very pleased to be able to say that this evening is not the last party we're going to have. Funny, the loudest shout always comes over by the bar. And the reason I say that is that there will be, I think, the largest party that Canberra has ever experienced on Tuesday morning. As we go into Southampton for the very last time as a cruise ship, it will be a really momentous occasion. There will be a tremendous number of people, not least the armed forces who will be sending out frigates to meet us and aircraft, etc., but also many, many people who will be coming down to see the ship come into Southampton for the last time. Now, I'm not going to say any more, except to say, on Tuesday morning, we intend to make that a very, very big party. The whole idea is to enjoy it. There is going to be so much happening. You will not have time to think about, this is the last time. Perhaps when we actually get up to Southampton and we have this ceremony of ringing off engines for the last time, that's the time to start thinking about that. But on the way up, you enjoy yourself. There are thousands of people who are going to be coming down to see this ship come in. Let us remember Canberra by giving her the biggest party that she's ever had in her life on the last day. We look forward to sharing that with you. Good night.
The galley, meanwhile, is busy with the next meal but one, the Chocoholics' late-night feast. Most of the temptation is being made by the ship's own confectioners.
Good evening, ma'am.
Slim Verron welcomes diners to the gala dinner. The galley has excelled itself. Wild boar terrine, cream of crab and sweet corn soup, lobster thermidor, grilled tornadoes of beef, roast rack of lamb glazed on a herb crust, pheasant, and a choice of 6 desserts. Captain Smith is joined for dinner by his wife, Jean. After a meal like that, it's only right that the executive chef and his team should take a well-earned bow.
Ladies and gentlemen, once more, I give you Dave McLaughlin and his galley brigade.
Tom O'Connor's been topping the bill on the Canberra for 20 years.
And my favourite story of the ship, I'll just tell you my favourite one. And that was in a storm one time. And the ship was we were taking water over the bows, heavy duty, bang, bang, you know. And the ship's riding it as best she can, you see. And it always baffles me about this, because captains always come on and say, and there's a heavy storm which we're steering into. And I always think, steering into the storm? Why aren't we trying to get away from it, you know? And the waves going crash like that. And a little old lady said to one of the officers, "There's water coming down the stairs." He said, "Listen, love, it's when it starts coming up the stairs you want."
Has Tom O'Connor, master of observation, known anything like this cruise?
This has got to be the ultimate experience at sea, I think. I've been on board Canberra for 20 years on and off, and I never thought I'd see the day
that she would eventually stop sailing. She looks in better nick than I look, I'll tell you that. I've had so many stories told to me about people's experiences of getting tickets. I mean, the hardest thing of all was to book for this, because naturally they say it's the last cruise at Canberra, you know, fill your form in by the 29th or the 4th. And there are people who literally only left it one day and had to scramble for a cabin. So it's been it's probably the most popular cruise, I think, in British seafaring history. But there's nothing quite like the atmosphere right now. It's a mixture between joy and sorrow. The skipper himself, I know, he's saying it's a joyous time because we're actually seeing a creature of the sea completely fulfill her full term, which is true. But then there's the sad part, because aboard this ship right now there are memories you couldn't take home in a bucket.
As usual, Tom did a show for the crew.
It's nice to be here, and there's certain things I'm going to do. I must tell you, I've got some true stories I've got to tell you about Canberra, some before you were ever born, some of you. But it's nice to... thank you, yes. And God love me, thinks I'm singing. And I was going to do an impression of a nutter, but he's beaten me to it. The crew have virtually the same feelings as passengers, actually. There's a mixture of both, there's sadness and there's joy. They gave me this, they've actually made me an honorary crewman, and they gave me my own t-shirt, and I felt honoured. It's like being given a medal, if you like, for service. They'll be sorry she's gone. We all think that maybe the mantle will be passed on to other P&O ships, and hopefully that's going to be the case. But there'll always be this special part. It's that one thing of saying I was there. And only we who are here now and those who've been before us on the ship can say that.
The queue can only be for one thing: food. On this occasion, it's the Chocoholics night at the late night buffet. Farewell messages were everywhere, even rubbed into the pile of the stair carpet. Goodbye is somewhat safer to spell than farewell.
And sunny spells. These conditions are expected to continue for the remainder of the morning.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
In the cinema, lecturer Elwyn Griffiths gives his last port talk.
Is now the last port talk of this very special farewell cruise. I've actually sailed as a port lecturer on or in 9 P&O ships altogether. That includes the Princess Cruises, of course, which is the American division of P&O.
So hot were the tickets for the farewell cruise that one couple from Norfolk flew to Palma when a cabin became vacant just to do the last 4 days. They'd cruised every year on Canberra since 1976. Harry Green on the right, talking here to Kenneth Vard, was on his 50th Canberra cruise.
Like you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because that's, as I was telling this gentleman here, that's where I have learned most of my shipping history.
This is the officer of the watch, and the time is 12 o'clock noon.
The last noonday report.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. From noon yesterday until noon today, Canberra has steamed a total distance of 509 nautical miles. That is 509 nautical miles at an average speed of 21.2 knots. And in fact, since Canberra began service on the 2nd of June 1961 until her final arrival in Southampton tomorrow, she will have steamed a total distance of 4,926,560 nautical miles.
Well, I would like to thank you all. You're all retiring.
And here's a group of people who, between them, have done a good number of those millions of miles.
Amazing.
Members of the Asian crew, for whom this voyage will be the last before retirement.
Peter, I can remember being here in 1973, and all of you have had a very long time with P&O.
4 of them were on the maiden voyage. laundryman Antonio Fernandez, his colleague Nick Cardoso, and cabin stewards A.P. Vegas and Alex Diaz. Alex Jameson, the chief electro-technical officer, was an apprentice electrician when the ship was built. He saw the keel laid in 1957. Nick Carlton, the staff captain, makes the retirement presentations. Up in the Crow's Nest Bar, another retirement. The barman, Billy Toot. His regulars gave him a proper send-off.
Can I ask you just to raise your glasses to a great barman we all miss, called Billy?
Canberra was the last ship in the P&O fleet to signal in Morse. The code itself becomes obsolete in 1999. On her last night at sea, First Radio Officer Freddie Lloyd sent the last message to Land's End. The final show in the Stadium Theatre, and one of the last opportunities to join Gerard Kenny in singing Canberra's song.
Now you are leaving, your journey is through. You served us so proudly, your captain and crew. We'll always remember, wherever we may be, our home here on Canberra, our home on the sea.
This is it. Come on, let's hear you, everybody. Loud as you can.
Always our lady of me. Canberra, Canberra, our wonderful home on the sea.
When the ship arrives back at Southampton tomorrow, she'll release 24,000 balloons, each of which has had to be blown up individually. Volunteers worked in shifts throughout the night. The final morning, and Mavis B's banners are draped down the side. At 8 a.m., the paying off pennant is hoisted, all 36 yards of it. It's one of the flags that takes precedence over the red ensign and Canberra's call sign, Golf Bravo Victor Charlie. The pilot comes aboard. Now the first real disappointment of the cruise. The ship is in thick fog. The Nab Tower, which marks the beginning of the Solent and is Canberra's landfall, is just discernible off to port. 3 destroyers and a frigate are among 9 Royal Navy ships out there somewhere to meet the ship on her homecoming.
The nav east and the nav end are in line.
There's tension on the bridge. These are just the conditions the mariners didn't want.
Straight for the west bound regatta channel.
We are now reducing speed.
HMS Cornwall takes her position astern. Off Hamble, the fog begins to lift. Now the champagne fountain is made for real, and the bubbly starts to flow.
And as you can see, some of the small boats have already come out to escort us in.
At last, the sun breaks through, and suddenly Canberra is surrounded by a churning swarm of small boats. She must be almost accustomed to this sort of welcome now, as she's escorted up Southampton Water in scenes reminiscent of her triumphant return from the Falklands. The Royal Artillery fire a salute from Mayflower Park. Canberra responds with a smoke display in the colours of P&O. The Army's tribute continues with a dramatic parachute drop by the Red Devils display team. The parachutist trails smoke and flags, including the P&O flag. One by one, they swoop down to make perfect pinpoint landings in Mayflower Park. Even Alice Lovely allows herself a rare drink.
Look at this, it's wonderful. Oh, thank you.
Amazingly, Captain Smith has brought his ship alongside just about bang on schedule. Another of his orders has been obeyed. He said there should be a party, and party there was. Right on time, the Canberra bomber flies past from its base at Marham in Norfolk. And then come the helicopters, Sea Kings with their Falkland connotations, a Lynx and Gazelles. It was only when the helicopters were out of the way that Canberra could release her 24,000 balloons. Canberra's song was never to be sung more lustily. We'll always remember, where'er we may be, our home here on Canberra, our home on the sea. Jean Smith joins the crowds at the rails as her husband inches Canberra onto her berth for the very, very last time. One ritual, almost a last rite, remains. It's left to the ship's cadets in the engine room and on the bridge to man the telegraphs for the captain's final order. Finished with engines. Officer Cadet Robert Alders stands by as the captain counts down to the final command.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Finish with engines.
Finish with engines. That's finished with engines, sir.
Royal Marine buglers sound the last post. Marine band beats the retreat. All that's left now is reminiscence.
It was quite fantastic to see the numbers that were there, the number of small boats, because there was a bit of fog on the way in, and suddenly all these boats appeared out of nowhere, and it was a tremendous welcome. Absolutely fantastic.
As the Red Devils wonder what to do with the P&O flag, Phil Raymond sums up the cruise.
There have been some really memorable moments. When we started the cruise, the sail away from Southampton was just unbelievable. The turnout to see us off, the party on deck, the like of which many of our really hardened passengers. Some have been here some have been on every year since the maiden voyage, and many of them had never seen anything like it before. We had our Tropicana night, the traditional island night on deck, has been one of the biggest nights of the cruise for many years. And I've never seen a Tropicana night like it. The lads, the technicians, just went out of their way. They wouldn't let me near the area until the last minute. And I could see why. It was just been decked with flags and bunting and balloons and streamers, and there were thousands of people up there. It was like working the Albert Hall on a really good night. I'm drained emotionally more than anything else. It's been my home for 16 years, and I think she's too young to die. She's too young to go. I can't believe that the ship's going. I don't think it's really sunk in yet. I've probably, give me in a few days' time, when I come back to Southampton and she's not here, and it hits me that I won't be cruising on her again, I think then I'll probably go home and weep a bit.
And that probably goes for all the passengers. They had been part of an extraordinary maritime event, probably unique because no other ship has been given quite this farewell. But then, no other ship was quite like Canberra. And if tears were shed, there's just the chance that a champagne bubble rose within them. In the Mayflower terminal, Joyce Needham, with her staff captain's cap and life belt, which she bought at the auction, waits to go home. Canberra has gone, but the memories will last the lifetimes of everyone who was there.
I mean, this is the greatest cruise I've ever been on. Not only the camaraderie and the feeling of family that's on here anyway, but they pulled out all the stops on this one.
To have worked with the people aboard the ship was a great privilege. They're a wonderful bunch of people. You know.
And Canberra has got an atmosphere. It's like there's like a ghost on board the ship. I don't know what it is. I've never experienced it on any other ship anywhere. You feel part of a family when you're on. The faces are the same, there's just different bodies have slipped in, that's all. So it just goes on. She'll go on when she's gone. And to me, in the memories of the people who've been on her, we've got something that no one else could ever buy.
Very sad. I think a lot of people are going to miss the Canberra. You can see it from the farewell parties that we've been having. But I'm sure that they will all go on to, say, the Oriana or the Arcadia and give it their special atmosphere.
She'll be remembered most of all for the fact that when you come through those doors on D-Deck to get on board, the first time even, you feel like you've come home. The passengers have said it's like coming home. You hear them coming back from a tour, and the first thing they say is the coach pulls up, "Oh, isn't it nice to get home? Let's go and have a cup of tea."
She has epitomised what cruising is to the British public, and I say that rather than the international public. But she has catered for the British and has been very proud of it. And I think that is really the essence of the ship, and what has perhaps raised her profile a lot more, of course, was her part in the Falklands campaign, where she was then really elevated to a position outside her normal cruising role in the eye and the mind of the British public.
I feel that I've had my life here on her, and she's been my delight, she's been my pleasure. Whatever I wanted, whatever I wanted to eat, if you knew what these young men have done for me this time, because I can't eat very much. I've lost something, and I have no wish to go on another ship.